Okay. Okay. So we're ready to start. So just before we start, I'll just start with a quick introduction and a bit of context. So first of all, this is in English, as you realized. So if anybody needs any help with translation or anything, just either raise your hand or you can write in the chat. Um, and just a few words about the Regenerative Farmers Network. So what we do is we bring together farmers to share knowledge, exchange experience, and support each other in the transition to regenerative agriculture. We're working to expand the adoption of regenerative practices, to expand the local evidence-based knowledge base, and to strengthen a leading, learning, and influential network of farmers, which will create the bridge between the field and the stakeholders. So today's farmer to farmer session actually came from the farmers, mainly actually Mayan, who is here, who raised the question, and then there was a big conversation about cover crops, specifically termination, because this is the season for it. And then we said let's look for a farmer who's got lots of experience about cover crops, and Herberto seemed like the perfect man for it, and he kindly said okay to the session. So thank you ahead, Alberto. So just about a bit about the how this session will look. So we'll have about 20 minutes where Herberto will speak about his context and his approach to cover crops. We have to keep in mind all the time the context aspect because each place is very different. And then we'll have about 20 minutes for questions, open conversation, whatever will come up. So write your notes. You can write them in the chat, whatever is most comfortable for you. And I think we'll hand it over to you, Herberto. You can introduce yourself. I think it will be the
Yes.
best.
Uh,
And
Let me
yeah,
start sharing my screen and we'll get into my context.
perfect. Do you want me to, or oh, you will.
No,
Perfect.
yes, get into it. So everybody can see my screen.
Yeah.
So I'm over here in Portugal. I'll just share it here, then it'll have a map. We have about 58 hectares of arable cropland, although we're still in the montado system because we do still have a lot of trees, and we have I think rainfall wise, we're very similar to you guys or to certain areas in that you have. So we're very rainy in the winter, in the fall. We're very dry in the summer. We'll get up to 40 some degrees in the summer. We might have multiple months of no rain at all. So I think one of the reasons that we took us into the cover cropping was our temperatures and our erosion wise. As you can see, we have in our context low organic matter, low pH, low water retention. We have very sandy soil.
Oh, Herberto,
Yeah.
one sec. If you can please turn it to presentation mode. And I think we don't see your next slide for some reason. I think you moved to the context.
Oh, I don't know why. Slideshow. Okay. You're not seeing this?
And now we're seeing the slide, but if you can do the slideshow mode, are you on it?
Yeah, I am.
Mm,
First
okay.
screen should be let's talk cover crops.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
was.
yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
I think this is it's okay.
And I'll go through the next one.
Perfect. Sorry.
Yeah, everything is working.
Yeah, I think it's good.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, so we started regenerative agriculture, or at least some of the practices, especially we started with cover crops. We didn't have any kind of help of anybody, so I learned by myself and by making all the mistakes myself. So yeah, I have a lot of do's and don'ts that I can share with you guys. Context wise, I mean, I've learned all there is that I can teach you. Context wise, is it arable crops? Is it cattle rotation? Is it the perennials? I mean, anything, we'll kind of gather all the questions for later, and we will go from here, because we still have a few slides that I want to share with you, just to give a context of how why we started using our cover crops. This is also why we had a lot of erosion, because the tilling had very low organic matter due to the tillage. Like I said, most of our rain comes in the winter and in the fall. So cover crops kind of covered the basis of everything that we were trying to do without actually spending too much money. Our plan was always to do cash crop or plant a cash crop in the spring. And that's what we were doing, about in 30 hectares about. So we did winter cropping or fall cropping, like oats, wheat, and we also did some sorghum in the spring, some sunflowers and pumpkins. That was like our rotation. So we kind of diddled and dabbled a bit with a lot of cover crops or species, and we figured out our mixture that we can pretty much do every year, and we're fine with that. I don't think we should be locked on completely. That's why we experiment a lot with 5 or 6 hectares every year with certain mixes. But yeah. So one of our goals, or a lot of our goals, I think it's everybody's goal, is to control erosion. EC, electric conductivity of the soil, of course, and have diversity in root systems, keeping our soil armor because of the heavy rainfalls. I can give you an example that's happening for the last week. We've been having a whole bunch of wind. So wind erosion dries soils completely, and it's been very hard to keep it covered. Yeah, and a lot of the leaching problem we had with the nitrogen soil building, we didn't have any kind of a basis to our soil. So all of these contexts, I mean, they're all adaptable to anywhere we are in the world. Balance is key. This
Oh,
is
I think you didn't change the slides again.
Again, for some reason.
Or
No, it hasn't changed.
I think you need
no.
to put it on a full screen
It
mode.
is. It is to me. It is.
Maybe you can reload the presentation or something.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay, yeah. Now we're on the
Okay.
slide.
Yeah. So what we've learned is, if we don't treat our covers as a main cash crop, we don't get the efficiency that we want at the end, especially with termination. It gets very hard to terminate cover crops when they're like at 40% of what they could do. So balanced soils, I mean, all the chemistry, if it's balanced, and the microorganisms, macrobiology in the soil, gives you an optimal symbiotic connection with the plants. But this is all perfect, but our soils, I don't think anywhere in the world are perfect. So, and it's all about the inputs in that sense. The mixes that we'll talk about right next slide. You just have to figure out, what are your goals? Is it to keep your soil covered? Is it to keep nutrients from leaching? What are you trying to do with the actual cover crop? Makes you choose the cover crops, and makes you from point A to point B. So when planting to termination, that all influences each step of the way. And we've done major mistakes, and we're organic certified, so we can't chemically terminate our cover crops. So that puts us in a position where we only have 2 choices: or we roller crimp it, and we have to choose the right species to do it and at the right time. And that sometimes is a bit of a problem because if it's too late, and then we skip up and all the water and all the water availability in the soils to germinate our cash crops. So it's finding balance between diversity, finding balance between the species and competition with your, let's say, with your perennial crops that are already in the field. So, I mean, it's a bit tricky sometimes. I already passed slide. Everybody can see it?
No, we're still on balance is the key.
Oh my God.
Uh,
Each time I go to slide, it disappears. Amazing. So, okay.
Yeah, picking your cover crops.
Picking your cover crops. Okay, so we have a massively amount of lists to go through every species and every family of cover crops. We like to do a mixed cover crop, so cool season and warm season cover crops, especially in the autumn if we have early rains. A lot of what we do will be with buckwheat. It germinates very quickly, covers the ground up, and everything else will start slowly but surely to come up through the fall and winter. And when we get a freezing weather, the buckwheat usually dies down, and all of the warm season dies down, and the others take control of the field. And that's part of our diversity program, kind of introducing like the buckwheat, the sorghum, the millet, and a few others with our cold season plantation. And it worked out very well, very well. I do have a picture somewhere. I'll remove it.
Buckwheat is a kosemet for
Yes, if you do have
translation.
any kind of a question, just be sure, and I'll explain some of these plants. Can you see this one?
Yeah, creating your mix.
Creating your mix, your pros and cons.
Yeah.
So this picture here is pumpkin that we used in our mix. This is somewhere in December, I believe. And we're getting into low temperatures, and you see the ground cover that it creates, and it takes up a lot of the water, so we're not just wasting water downriver. So it's locking water, it's locking nutrients, while the other cover crop is still trying to grow. And I mean, this is what we kind of talk about the mixes with cold and warm season cover crops. And their effectiveness, even though you're not actually getting the pumpkin out of it or anything else out of it, what we are doing is getting the ground cover, locking in nutrients for the winter cover crop to come into, and actually these will break down very quickly because we don't get that cold.
Herberto, sorry,
Yeah.
there was a question. What's your main crops that you grow?
Our main crops, it depends on the year. We kind of diversify a bit. Sorghum, this year was fava bean. We're producing fava beans in no-till scenario. So we've mixed a few other species in with the fava bean. I don't know how you call the little fava bean, but we call it faveta, and it's the smaller fava bean, especially for animal consumption, rather than for food. We do have about 5 hectares that we actually tilled to trial the bigger fava bean for humans consumption. What else? We're doing pumpkins this year also, and sorghum. We did triticale and lupins, the yellow lupins. We
For
call
the
it
seed?
tremusilla. Yeah. It's not for human consumption, it's for animal feed, and especially to reseed. A lot of the forestry people like it to introduce nitrogen. So I don't know if you want to go back to the species themselves. I don't think it's that important. You can get this information anywhere on the internet.
Yeah, I think we can continue.
I think we can continue, especially because you want to talk about more of the termination, right?
Yeah.
But it does start at the beginning, picking the ones that you want so you can make them die out at the time that you want to. So there's a lot of problems also with the termination and the actual cover crop itself. We've run into problems where it's not, they are producing a lot of biomass, they're producing a lot of it, and we've seen the more diversity, the better the cover crop grows. But at termination time, it'll lock a lot of that nutrient that it sucks up. And water-wise, it also, we reckon about 7 millimeters of water after roller crimping. If it's a lot of a biomass, so it will actually dry out our soil just a bit at termination. So we have to pick a time to terminate, and we still get some more rain after it to kind of soak in, because we will have that problem where if we terminate too fast or too late, it'll dry out at least that layer of soil, and we'll end up with no germination at all. And that was not a nice thing to kind of happen. The price tag on cover crops will depend on the species that you want to use and seed availability. We've ran to that problem as well. We've got to a point where we thought of a mix, no way we could get the seed, and we had to redo all the mix, and it kind of pivoted the wrong way. So a lot of trial and error, and you just have to plan for it about a year in advance of what you're trying to do, especially if you're going through annuals like we are. Our cash crops are mainly annuals. It gets to a point where if it doesn't work, you just have to, or one, you have to till it, and then you're going back to square zero. Or you just have to wait a longer period of time, and you're obligated to irrigate, and it's water usage that isn't what we have. So especially with perennials, the flowering, getting species that can flower before your perennials that flower is a great advantage, because you start getting those pollinators in beforehand, and you actually terminate just before or at flowering, especially with trees, apple trees, and even vineyards and stuff. I mean, if you can start getting some flowers in just before, I mean, that's all. I think we'll wait for some questions so we can get a bit deeper on that. But it's an excellent usage of cover crops, bringing those pollinators in. I treat my cover crops as I would do a composting system. So I'm very careful of our legume to carbon carbonation plant. So legumes and grasses, I try to get the ratio down to where I'm actually decomposing it as a compost. Where we have a very hot summer and a very long summer, I like it to be high carbon, so we do have that protection on the soil, that armor on the soil for a long period of time, rather than, let's say we have only fava beans and I roll the fava beans or roller crimp the fava beans to plant corn, because we want that nitrogen in the soil, but it will never stay on the soil more than a few weeks. It will just break down very quickly, and we lose that protection of the soil. And it doesn't mean that we have the ratio of nitrogen that we want to anyway. So it's a mix. So we just have to kind of experiment a bit with the mixes, and to be contextualized with your own context. Seeding the cover crops. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I'll leave it like this, and I think we have a better chance.
Mhm.
I've done most. I haven't done drone casting, but I guess it's the same as broadcasting. We've always, if we broadcast, we till just as a minimum till. We'll go in about 5-10 centimeters deep, and just so they can have a seed bed. I've noticed the more diversity we have, the better it comes up and germinates. But our preferred method, if we can have it, is the no-till drill, and we like to drill it in. The broadcasting, if you're not tilling it in, so you're just leaving the seeds exposed, and your soil is poor in organic matter, there's no material there to like cover the seeds when it rains or something like that, the germination doesn't occur very well. So we kind of lose most of our diversity depending on the seeds and the species that we use. Some we don't have. I mean, they just disappear from the field. We don't have a good experience with that. Just because it might rain, and even if we time it, so we plant it or seed it just before a big rain or like a week of rain, it still doesn't work out very well, because then we'll have one day that will dry out very quickly. And if the seed isn't covered and it doesn't have good seed to soil contact, it just doesn't work that well. So we're not very apologetic of broadcasting or drone casting, unless you're casting certain species like into irrigated corn or anything like that, where you know you're going to get water onto it and it's going to germinate and we'll just keep it wet for that period of time that it needs. Other than that, we really prefer no-till drill. And you have all kinds of no-till drills out there. Cheap, expensive, and here and there that can actually do the job. And some of even the conventional ones, the discs drills, they'll work very well, especially when after a rain or just before rain, if your ground isn't too hard. I mean, even those, it's just enough that you can start getting the germination, and then the diversity of the plants will actually sort itself out to a certain point.
Roberto, I'm just gonna
Yes.
give you a heads up on the time, maybe just another few minutes, and then we'll
Yeah,
start going.
I'm gonna go into termination a bit, and
Perfect.
we can start going into questions and get a bit in deeper to what everybody wants to.
Thank you.
Termination. We got chemical, mechanical, biological. I like to talk about the biological because we start integrating animals, especially if you're doing regenerative agriculture. It's a key point. I don't. I've never used this method because we don't have enough room for animals on our farm. Uh, it just isn't worth it, but we're thinking about it. Chemical. I know a lot of conventional farmers like this method because it's a sure method, and I would love that I wasn't in certified organic at the time we started this, because I would have loved to kill it, made sure that the cover crop was killed, and that's one of our biggest issues, was to kind of learn the equilibrium or the balance of the actual species that we're using, termination with the roller crimper. And we actually only have two choices, or terminating with the roller crimper, or we have to till it in, and yeah, it's not very good. Chemical would have been at least a one more tool that we would have had, and we do not. Chemical also works with roller crimping, and let's say an application with urea, so you can burn the plants. So you have two effects on the plant, the roller crimping and the burning, and you're adding your own nitrogen to the soil. So that's one concept. Mechanical would be or tilling or with the roller crimping. I've seen very nice machines working in vineyards and orchards, like the one we have in the blue tractor on the top left. That actually cuts the cover crop and pushes it out to the side so it mulches underneath the trees or vines. I mean, it works great, I think, especially with the perennial cover crops that you can just keep cutting and mulching on the sides. I think it's a very interesting concept. We don't use it, but
Is
I
that
guess it's
something a machine you can buy, or is it?
yeah,
Mhm.
This one is a flail mower with a side shoot, let's say. So it shoots it out one side or the other. In this case, it actually has an auger shooting it out both sides. So for every pass, you're actually throwing your cover crop to each side, and it decomposes underneath the tree, or the vine in this case. It isn't that much. Depends on the volume that you're putting down next to the root system, but it'll heat up a bit. It's decomposing, so it'll heat up a bit, but it's not enough volume to actually be very, very hot that it'll kill the vine or the tree. I've seen other things like the one on the bottom right that they'll actually cut the cover crop or roll the cover crop, and they'll actually bring in some compost, and that's how they keep the weeds down underneath the trees. That's pretty effective, especially year after year when you start getting the big mound, and it's very interesting in that sense. We do have a vineyard very close by that's working with these regenerative practices when I've been over there at the beginning of last year. And they're about 60 hectares of wine, and they're still doing mechanical underneath the trees or underneath the vines, and they're doing cover crops in between the rows, so they're keeping like a half regenerative, half conventional, and it also worked great. So that's one of the problems that we try to work with. When I've worked with an apple grower, was the cover crop underneath the trees, right in the line. And I think, especially with these perennials, you have a better flexibility of choosing these cover crops, especially because you can terminate them a few times in the year. So you can mulch them, you can do it multiple times, rather than us, in my context, as an annual, I have to get it right in the first go. So I have to get it, if it doesn't work out, I have to till. And then in this sense, with orchards and vines, I mean, it works out a lot better. I want to pass to the next one, termination time.
Yeah.
I think in these contexts of orchards, you have so much flexibility that you can do a very big diversity mix to it. One of the biggest problems we see, or I see here, in our context, is a lot of people try to get the nitrogen levels up because we're very low on nitrogen. And once we start introducing nitrogen to the soil, we burn up our carbon in the soil, because there's always an equilibrium, there's always a CN ratio. And it's a big mistake when we start using 80%, 90% mixes with legumes. And don't forget that when legumes get to flowering, start putting on pods, they become nitrogen deficient, so they start sucking up nitrogen to feed its seeds. And you get, if your termination time is off, you start actually being nitrogen deficient in your soil, and usually it all goes up to the seed and up to the plant, and not necessarily stay in the soil like we want to. I do think the flowering method just before your plants or your trees start flowering works very well to call in the pollinators. And because we can have such a variety of a diverse variety of mixes, You can have perennials in there, like ryegrass and other grasses, and other legumes that can handle a cut. So imagine like you would be doing haylage and you're expecting multiple cuts. You can also do this in orchards, to work multiple times in cutting it, so you get various mulch periods if you have the water, of course. I don't know if you want to start going into questionings. I'll ramble on all day if I need to, but
Yeah, I think this is maybe a good time. Yeah, maybe you can take off the presentation mode and first of all, thank you. It was
yeah,
very,
you're
very,
welcome. I hope I
yeah,
didn't ramble too much.
I don't think so. Um, okay, does anybody have any questions, thoughts? Feel free.
Yes, I have a couple of questions. Okay, so have you monitored or assessed the effect on pests or, monitoring like pest infestation and the effect of cover crops on it?
The effects of pests. Well, we usually have we can visualize it usually. Like in the fava beans, we get the pulgão. So it's a nematode. And when we started polycropping with the fava beans, because it's in the same time period that we usually plant our cover crops, we started polycropping it. So we started introducing, let's say, mustard, radish, and we started seeing a big effect on the plants themselves, especially when we start going up in diversity. So multiple plant species, even inside the plant species itself, like yellow oats and black oats, we started seeing a big diversity in everything else other than the problems.
So you see like a balance
Yeah, it
between
balances
pests
out, and
and
it's incredible when you do have a certain problem and you start noticing the change when you're bringing in the predators for it and everything else. And you're actually creating a home for everything else that comes in rather than the pest. That also works with the bacteria, the fungus. When we start bringing in different diversity and what's the word? So all of benign bacteria and fungus and pests that are kind of taking our profit away, we start seeing them shrink down because we're keeping the beneficials as well. And the more we get into it, and the more we cover crop, the more we have diversity in our mixes, we start seeing that as we're creating the population of the beneficials into it, we start seeing the others reduce pretty drastically.
You have a system of monitoring. Galit, nice to meet you. Do you have a system of monitoring? I mean, like you have like a way that you can count or you monitor your sections to see how is developing the natural predators against the pest?
We don't necessarily do any counting. We just go out and visualize it. We're not that big that we start doing. We're not that scientific in that sense, but we notice a big difference just looking at it. Yeah. I mean, if you're not on the ground and looking at it,
yeah, of course. Yeah. Yeah, but when you have sometimes we have a large section or they are very away from each other, so you need at least a system to control and it doesn't run away. And I heard that you control under the lines in the vines, at least with nitrogen. Isn't that creates a how do you say, distracts the balance of nitrogen and then creates attraction to pests. When you have like over nitrogen, some of the crops can also lock nitrogen, and that doesn't create an imbalance, let's say, for the crops or for the earth.
Yeah, when we've seen a lot of mixes coming out, especially conventional mixes, and pre-made mixes that are high in nitrogen, yeah, we definitely get a problem because it burns up all the carbon in the soil. So it actually becomes high carbon. And the termination times, you never have anybody explaining to you where to terminate so you can get maximum yield out of that nitrogen. Especially the timing, like if your crops want the nitrogen when they're flowering or when they put on their vegetation, that's when you want, and that's when you want to terminate. But it doesn't mean that the cover crop will be ready for it. And I mean, I would rather have a diverse cover crop where I do have some legumes and I do have some grasses taking up that nitrogen and kind of holding it in. So it's a multi-year planning to a certain degree. So we lock in this year, so we start having a multi-species cover crop with a lot high carbon. I think that's one of the biggest problems we have everywhere in the world is low carbon in our soils, especially when we have too hot of weather. So I like to put a lot of grasses into the mixes, flowering plants, and I mean also legumes, but I want to terminate them at flowering or just past flowering, so we can have the maximum yield of nitrogen into it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it will create an imbalance. Yeah, if you have too much legumes. Yeah.
I think in Mayan, you have the questions about the timing and the flowering as well.
Just you said about flowering, you want to stop you want to keep the nitrogen for what you're growing rather than the crop. So you said termination of flowering of the cover crop or of the main crop you're growing. I didn't understand.
It's termination of the actual legumes. And you want to balance it out with the other mixes or the other mix that you have in there with the grasses and stuff, that you're actually locking into that nitrogen. So anything past flowering on a legume, let's say clover or peas or something like that, or fava bean itself, you want to hit that termination at that time. So does that balance out with your, let's say, orchard or with your vines that need that nitrogen? That has to be figured out, I mean, step by step. You have to plan it out a year earlier to know that I'm planting this species that is a long period growth where it's only going to flower when my plants actually are in a vegetative cycle, and that's where they'll need it. So I need to terminate it just a bit before, so it unlocks that nitrogen, or it'll just start sucking that nitrogen up from the ground and putting it in its seeds, putting it in its leaves, because that's where it wants the nitrogen into it. And you'll actually lose that nitrogen rather than keeping it in your soils. With the grasses that we usually put in, they'll actually share out nitrogen to the grasses. The legumes will actually share out before they start sucking it up to their own seeds, so flowering. So anything before that, it'll share it out. So the grasses will uptake a bit of that nitrogen that the legumes in the mix will produce. And yeah, I mean, this all has to be thought of a year before, and especially taking in consideration why you're using that nitrogen in the long run. Does it make sense even to have a legume into your mix? We have a lot of clovers naturally growing in our fields, so it doesn't mean that we need to add more legumes to it. You know what I mean? It's a tricky, because if we do use a lot of legumes in our mixes, we start burning up that carbon that we want, and there's no balance to our soils. We start burning it up again. So organic matter will start falling. It will become more acidic. So we really have to be careful with how much nitrogen we pump in. If we're using a whole bunch of fava beans and clovers and stuff that we can roller crimp right before corn, and that sucks up a whole bunch of nitrogen, yeah, sure, fine, to a certain degree. But other than that, we just have to keep a very fine balance with the CN ratio.
Do you test it? Do you do like Gali asked about monitoring for the carbon to nitrogen ratios?
Oh yeah. Yeah, we'll do soil sampling before and after if we need to. We're at the point that we don't have to because we've put a lot of thought in what we're putting into the mixes, so we're fine with that. But yeah, definitely when we're testing out a mixture, we'll try to test before and after and just kind of see how it decomposes. Also, when we
When you
start cutting
say
it,
before and after, you mean before and after what?
roller crimping.
So just before and just after, or do you take
Well,
time after you're
after the roller crimping, so it breaks down, yeah. So
so
sometimes when the
2
cash
weeks?
crop, sometime when the cash crop is already growing, we'll test it again just to see if it has everything it needs, especially with foliar. We'll do foliar testing and we'll see if it has enough nitrogen or not.
You said, I have a question as well. You said earlier about like kind of treating the cover crops as compost
Yeah.
in a way. Can you say a bit more about that? Like, do you actually see that being a solution that can really take down your composting and
Oh yeah.
applications?
Yeah, because the biomass can be pretty large volume actually. And we've seen it where we get a lot of grasses in our mixes and it takes too long to break down. So when we get to fall, we still have that biomass on top of the soil. And we like to start breaking it down maybe middle of the fall season because we do have very hot weather, so everything stops. The biology stops completely. So all that period of time, we want the ground covered, but as soon as it start getting rain, we wanted to break it down again. So we like to use a lot of carbon in the mix. So the CN ratio will be higher in carbon and less in nitrogen. If we use too much nitrogen plants, so let's say the clovers, the fava beans and stuff, we'll plant our cash crop into it, but it won't secure that soil armor that we want throughout the summer. Because our problem is the summer, not necessarily the winter or the fall. For the fall and for the winter, that's why we use our warm season cover crops. So they have a heads run, an advantage to use that still warm weather, but already raining to cover the soil and protect the soil, even if that has degraded over time. Our last cover crop degraded over time. So that's where we found our balance in that sense. So we kind of want to compost as much as possible to get that organic matter up. So we'll treat it like a compost. So we'll put a certain amount of grasses, a certain amount of legumes, and that's how we kind of treat it inside of our field. So instead of bringing compost in, we're composting our own material in situ. So that's how I kind of see the thing working out. The more
And you're doing
biomass.
it,
Yeah.
and so you're not doing it by tilling it in. Like you're happy enough with the decomposition on
Yeah.
the ground, above
Yeah.
ground.
If we're experimenting something and we actually till it or something, we know we're going to step back, but I mean, it just has to work out wherever we're trying to head out.
Yeah. There was also questions. One of the farmers a mango grower asked me to ask if you know if you can recommend maybe any plants for breaking up heavy clay soils. Specifically, which plants develop deep roots and can add organic matter that can help channel oxygen and drainage.
Yeah. I mean, oats works well. I mean, if you could get Sudan grass, I don't know if you could get something like that into it. Phacelia will go down pretty deep. Some brassicas will go down pretty deep. And I think the idea is not the big, let's say tillage radish, go in and break it down. You want the finer things to get down as deep as possible. So you want more of the fine roots going down into it rather than a big, a giant bulb. I would think that would be the most efficient. But I know that the problem is summer, and Sudan grass likes very wet, very hot. And although it's a dry season crop, but sometimes it's also hard to control, especially in orchards. But I guess you can always flail more or something like that. So it's not that big of a deal.
Mhm. And regarding water, water and water competition, also
Yeah.
you mentioned before when you roll or crimp, if it's the wrong timing, right? Something about like you spotted a big amount of water that was taken up, right?
Yeah. Our first cover crop that we put in, we roller crimped in May, and that's about when we start planting certain things. We were planting sorghum and we were planting sunflower. And we had a big mass of biomass cover crop, heavy on the biomass. I mean, we were very proud of it for our first year. And what we've noticed was that we killed it with the roller crimp and it died out because May it was already hot enough for it almost to die out on its own, especially when we roller crimp and killed it. We noticed that it trying to regrow sucked about 7 millimeters a day of water per hectare. And we've got poor germination. We got, I mean, no germination at all in certain areas. And it really hardened up our soils that, especially our clay soils. We have about 2 or 3 different types of soils here at the farm in 60 hectares. So, yeah, especially our clay soils, we got to a point where we roller crimped first and then we seeded that year. And in certain areas, we added 90 kilos per row of weights because our seeder wasn't able to go into the soil. It was that hard. So it removed all the water from the soil, at least that top section of soil. It really removed it. So we have to be careful with the cover crops in that sense as well. So we actually try to terminate actually now in March or April at the most. So we start shortening up our season. So we start getting species in that will actually terminate quicker. So once they go into the milk stage on the grasses or the flowering stage on the legumes, that's when we want to terminate the whole mix. At least for us. I mean, I guess in vineyards and in orchards, you have a bit more leeway with it, but I mean, you also don't want the competition with the water.
But even if you do roller crimp a plant earlier, it will still try to regrow, no?
Yeah. For
So
us, it's a big problem because we already
yeah.
have the cash crop planted. Well, I mean, like, let's say the mangoes, they're still growing, everything is still growing, the vineyards are still growing. You can roll it as many times as you need to and keep pumping that carbon into the soil for sure. It's like having animals out there. Not exactly the same, but as long as it tries to regrow, you can roller crimp and roller crimp and roller crimp, or you flail more, and you have some regrowth, some won't. I mean, depending on the species you pick out, some you can just keep on going through it with the flail mower all year long. And that's fine. You're pumping carbon into the soil. That's fine. But that's why a lot of people will actually till or use a different species for in the line, so it doesn't have a direct competition to it. Especially with the water that you're pumping into it. You guys have a lot of irrigation, right? Mainly, yeah. So so you don't want to compete with the irrigation, or you're doing fruit irrigation. Yeah, I mean, it's just a matter of picking out the species. You have a lot to pick through. You can actually let it die out, depending on the short season of the plant. I mean, and just let it decompose.
Yeah.
We use a lot of clovers in the line, so they're not high, so they're not touching the actual plant. And it'll just let it die out, go through its cycle. It won't actually compete with the actual plant. And it'll just decompose on its own, reseed itself, and most of the time you don't have to reseed it, at least not every year. So you kind of have to look out for the population of the regrowth year after year, but yeah, it becomes like a perennial pasture underneath the trees and the plants. And then in between the plants, in between the lines of the plant, and then that's like a second main mixture that you'll use to cover it. Yeah.
And what about under the tree lines that are a bit heavier and darker, maybe like in avocados, in Yoav's case? Do you know anything like about are there species and varieties that are good for cover crops in shade?
Oh, good
You wouldn't know,
question.
hey, in arable, it's not relevant.
Well, it really depends on. I've seen oats that do really good, depending on the oats. I've seen triticale that does pretty good underneath trees. I mean, sometimes it depends on the species and depends on the variety itself. So inside that species, it changes quite a bit sometimes. So although it may not work necessarily in shade, but it's good enough for the job that you want it to do. So you're not taking full advantage of it, but at least if it's doing like 90 or 80% of what it should be doing, it should be good enough, depending on your goal.
Yeah. Any more questions, anybody? Questions, comments, ideas, thoughts?
I have a question because Sahar shared your website where I saw that
On climate farmers.
yes, that you work in montados. So I'd love to have a montado in my own backyard, but I mean, what's the motivation of crimping in montado?
So what? Sorry.
I saw in your website that you do crimping in montados.
Yeah. We're still in an area that we have plenty of trees in our fields. Some fields are quite open, but we're still quite dense in some areas.
So you do all like agriculture in between the native trees.
Yeah, exactly. Let's say it's inefficient in a certain way. Like we can't use necessarily GPS to guide us, keep our lines straight. In that sense, it's a bit inefficient, but we trying to not be the norm and put cattle everywhere. But it'll work. I mean, it's a hassle. The work becomes a few more hours long because of the trees and stuff. But we get around them. We try not to disturb the trees as much as possible. Especially now we have a new tractor with a cab. I used to go under the trees without a cab. I mean, it works. And my area, we planted a lot of wheat. We've planted a lot of oats and stuff, and it always worked. And the last few years, or maybe 20 years, it's been worse and worse. I don't know if it's exactly because of the inefficiencies, but I can tell you we started off by with an organic matter of 0.03 on our farm when we started testing because of the tillage. And we're now at about 4% with the cover crops, and we haven't done any kind of chemical regulation of the soil. So we haven't added phosphorus, no nitrogen because we can't use nitrogen. We haven't put any calcium on, haven't done any of that. We just used cover crops to get as much out of it as possible. Now we're at a point that we will need to do a few chemical inputs, but yeah, we'll just go bit by bit.
Wow.
But
And what
yeah.
about competition with the trees in your crops?
No problem. No problem at all. They're already established. We're using annuals. We're not using perennials. Although some annuals will do compete with the smaller trees, of course. We haven't gotten to a point that we've seen the actual tree or something like that will die because of the annuals, because of a large cover crop. We haven't. We do have some prickly pears. And they'll get out competed if they're too small. So we have to maintain that cover crop with multiple cuts of the cover crop. Other than that, yeah, no problem with the main trees. I mean, most of them are 100 years old and plus. So that's
Yeah. I mean more the other direction, that because of the trees, maybe the crops don't, the arable annual crops don't get
no,
established.
I've heard about people saying, what about the shading in the winter and stuff? No, I mean, there might be some inefficiencies, but the best, let's say with the oak trees that we have, the azinheiras, they carry the best solubilized bacteria that solubilize phosphorus. And I mean they just keep giving. I mean, they're like a little nest of bacteria that keeps on introducing it back into the fields. And they'll go into water systems that our animals will never get into because they're too deep. And they'll just pump water up. And even during the summer, you'll see some green underneath the trees. So they're keeping our bacteria and our funguses alive because they're bringing up that humidity. And I think they're very like a bunker system to hold on to the microbiology of the soils in our field. And we'll see a big boom after it rains, and it'll start coming away from those trees and going into the middle of our fields. Although our plan is to reintroduce a lot of that microbiology every year after year, but they're already doing that job, and that's what inspired us to do that, introduce more bacteria in a certain or fungus, of course. So that all that microbiology back into our soils, like after a big rain, when we know life starts developing in the middle of our fields where there's no trees or something like that. And yeah, of course, I think it works great. But of course, there's inefficiencies. I can't put a GPS onto it, onto the tractor to keep our lines straight, and it's harder in that sense. But I mean, I don't see a big problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Okay, Roberto, I think unless anybody has any more questions, I think we'll say thank you once again. For me, it was really interesting. I hope everybody got at least something new. And yeah, and Herberto, really, we really appreciate this. I think this is the best way to learn from people who are doing the work on ground and really bringing the insights. And yeah, and maybe we can do this again sometime later on. And yeah, we'd love to stay connected.
Yeah, for sure. Keep in touch, and any questions you have, especially with the roller crimping or something like that. I mean, just yeah. I did have one point I want to add. We did have problems with our roller crimper. We weren't putting enough weight onto it, and there was a lot of regrowth because of that. So that's something to keep in consideration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Amazing. Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you everybody for joining, and we'll keep in touch.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very
See
much.
you.
Thank you. Bye.
Mhm.
Um,